Hello and welcome to another tutorial from MoICT. In this tutorial, we'll be making a gravity run game using Windows Form and C#. Let's take a look at what this game does. So to start the game, the player automatically goes down and lands on the platform. I can go up, and once I'm over to the top side, the picture changes, and then I can come back down and the picture changes back to the normal running one. As you can see, the obstacles are running past, and as I pass through the obstacles, the score is going up. So if I hit one of the obstacles now, right, it says game over, press enter to play again, and if I press enter now, the high score will change to the current one that I scored. Okay, and then if I go back, and this time I'll just hit this obstacle here. So right now, although I scored 1, if I press enter again, the high score will stay at 4. Okay, and this time I'm going to try and run past a little bit. Once you score over 10, the obstacle speeds will change and they will come to you a little bit faster, and your speed for the player jump will change as well. So I'm going to try and play this for a bit longer. Okay, as you can see, the label backgrounds are also transparent, so they actually match up with the platforms, as you can see on the Windows Form there. Okay, so now after this one, the obstacle speed should speed up now, and your jump speed is also speeding up. Okay, so now if I hit the obstacle and press enter again, everything goes back to the start. So the high score will stay, and basically we'll check whether that score was higher than this one. If it is, then it sets the high score up for us. Okay, we'll be making this game using the Windows Form and .NET. So let's go ahead and make a new project. File, new project, and because I've used the template already, it's showing up on the left hand side here, but if it's not showing up for you, then you can just type in Windows on the search, and you'll see that there's two different types. So there's the C# Windows Form app, and then the C# Windows Form app .NET framework. So the .NET framework is the older version that we used before, but because now we want to start using the new framework, although there's you can still create the similar game using the .NET framework as well. So we're just going to use the .NET one for now. Okay, click next. So make sure you save the project where you can find it, right? So right now my projects are saved inside the C drive, but for now that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to name this one Gravity Run Game WinForms MoICT. Okay, so that's the name of the project, and then if I click next, I'll be asked to which framework I want to use, but I'll just go for the latest one, which is .NET 6. Click create. Okay, so this is the empty form. Before we start, we need to make sure we download and import the pictures to the project. So the pictures are available on the MoICT website. You can download all of them and make sure you unzip them from the zip file. So you have the player run down, run up, the platform tile, the boxes, and also the background still image. Okay, so if we go back to the project here and just go for the form. So for the form, let's change the text of the form to Gravity Run Game MoICT. Right, so the text basically just shows on the title here. Okay, make sure you frequently save your project. Right, and if I go to the background image section inside the properties window just for the form, I can click on the 3 dotted button here, and then so for project resource file, I'm just going to click on import, and then select all the images there. Click open, and they will all be imported into the form. So basically right now you can see that players animating on that one, players animating on this one as well. That's the platform tile which will be used, that's the obstacles, and here's the background image that we need. So if you select the background image still and click OK. Okay, so right now the background shows up like this because it's set to tile, right? So what we need to do here is we need to set it to stretch, so it stretches to the size of the form. Okay, so I'm just going to save that for now. Alright, let's go get from the toolbox, let's go ahead and grab the picture box. There we are. Okay, so this is the first picture box, so I'm going to just place it here right at the top, and then stretch it all the way up. Okay, it's okay if it goes a little bit over as well. Okay, so with that one done there, that's going to be the first platform. And then copy that, paste it again, and then this time I'm going to paste it all the way down here. Okay, make sure this edge fits into the border because that's where the labels are going to be placed. Okay, so there we have the two. So if I hold shift on my keyboard, I'm able to select both of them at the same time. You can do this individually as well, but if you do it both together, it kind of saves a lot of time. So if I select one of them, hold shift, select the other, so now I have got both of them selected. Okay, so now I can go to the properties window for these picture boxes and go to the background image. Okay, and I'm going to pick the platform tile blue, click OK, and then it will set it to tile by default, so that way it actually continues over. Okay, so both the tiles are set. Let's go grab another picture box. Okay, this time I'm going to set it to the player. Okay, so make sure you change the name of this one to player. Right click on the picture box, say choose image, and then we'll choose the down, so we're facing downwards. Okay, place it there, click on the little triangle there, and then you'll get this little box. Here you can, say choose image, or you can change the size mode. You can do the same thing in the properties, but this is obviously a little bit easier to access. So click on size mode, choose stretch image, and then you can stretch it to something like this. So if you need the size, that's the location. The size is 70 by 74. Okay. At the moment, the picture box has a white background. We need to change that to transparent. So if you go to the click on the picture box, go to the back color, I clicked away, and go to web, and then choose transparent on there. So the way the picture box's transparency work is that it will inherit the background of the form, right? So that works for same with these ones. So if I place this picture box over this one, you can see that it's still inheriting the background from that background of the form. Okay, so that's interesting to keep in mind just for picture boxes in the future. I'm just going to keep that one here. I'm going to make 2 copies of the player. Okay, so there's 2 copies there. Let's make the obstacle here. So try the box. I'm just going to place this box over here and then send it to the back. Maybe make it slightly taller. And do the same for this one here. Okay. So make sure it's the same size there. I'm just going to place this one over here. Okay, and send this one to the back as well. So it's behind the platform. Might move this one down a little bit because it looks too indented. Okay, that's fine. So once again, I'm going to hold shift while I got this one selected, and then hold shift and click on this one. So I've got both of them selected there. Now I can come back here and change. There's a tag option here. I can type in obstacle. Okay, so that way both of these boxes have an obstacle tag to them. Okay, so the player can stay there, that's fine. We need 2 labels for this game. So if I go back to the toolbox, drag and drop a label here. So that's the first one. Let's name this one LBL score. So that's for the score. Right, and we'll set the background to transparent. Okay, and then we'll change the font size. So if you click on the font, click on the little button here, and then that will bring up this dialog box where we can change it to bold and change that to 16. So that way the label is slightly bigger. Okay, and we also want to change the fore color to white. Okay. And lastly, we're going to change the text to score:0. That's the default text. So if the background looks like this for the label, basically what we're going to do is we're going to tell C# to make this platform the parent of this label. So it will inherit the background from this one, the same way our player is inheriting the background from the form. Okay, so I'm just going to make another copy of the label here. So while I got the label selected, Control C, Control V, okay, and then I'm going to move it down here. So this one's going to be for the high school. High school colon 0. Okay, so both of the labels are set. Last thing I need is the timer. Okay, drag and drop the timer to the form. So the timer gets added here, not on the form itself. So inside the timers property, we're going to go ahead and say, call this one game timer. Set enable to true. Okay, and set the interval to 20. Okay, so the game assets are pretty much ready. We just need to add the events to it. So if I click on the timer now, and inside the properties window, click on the little lightning bolt icon. So that basically adds the events to a component that we choose. So for the game timer, you only have one event that we can add, which is a tick. So I'm going to go click inside of it and say game timer event. Okay, once I typed it in, just press enter. Now that will take you to the code view, right? So inside the code view right now, you can see that that's the event that we typed in for the timer. If I go back to the design view on the tab from the top, okay, now if I click on the form, not on any of the components, so click on the form, just click on the background there. While still inside the events window, I'm going to go and find the key up event. Okay, and then right here, I'm going to say key is up, like so, press enter, and that gets added here. Okay, so right now we are inside of this. That's perfectly fine. I think one other thing we need to do here is change the name of the high school label, because it still says label 1 there. So let's say here LBL high school. That way it's a lot easier to read when we code it into the program. Okay, so with the player setup and the obstacles. Okay, so now we are ready to write some code. So right now with the 2 events added, we're going to add one more function here. So we're going to call this function, if I scroll down a little bit, call this function private void restart game, do the brackets, and then do the curly brackets here. Okay, so this is a function that's just simply going to run and change few values for some of the components, and also reset and basically move the obstacles away from the form when the game starts. Okay, with the function now added, let's go ahead and add our variables. Okay, so start at the top. First one is going to be an integer called, let's call it gravity. Right, we can leave that one blank, and then another integer called gravity value. This one we can set it to 8. Another integer called obstacle speed. Okay, set that to 10. One that will be very slow. Then another one called score is going to be set to 0, and then high score is also 0. So these are the default values of these, right? And then we're also going to need a boolean for game over, so just to check whether the game is still running or not. And the last one we're going to need is a random number generator. So we want to randomly place the objects away from the player, and then once the objects have left the scene towards the left side of the screen, you can then come back at another random position. Okay, so I'm going to say random. Visual Studio 2022 version that I'm using right now, it actually has a very smart IntelliSense installed, so you actually can guess what kind of stuff you're going to put in, and then it actually helps you putting it inside the code, so you actually save some typing. So right now what I've done here is I just typed in random, and then it just said, you know, do you want to make a random variable equals to new random, because that's how it's generally used anyway. So if you're not using the same version of Visual Studio, that code will work exactly the same, but obviously as Microsoft creates new versions of it, they make improvements to help with productivity. Okay, so these are the variables that we're going to need. I'm just going to keep it, the comment here, say global variables. Okay, so the reason these are global variables is because they are defined outside any function, so they can be accessed from this event or this event or to this function. But if we define them inside of a separate function, then unfortunately we won't be able to use them outside. So if it's inside a function, it's a local variable. If it's outside the functions, then it's a global variable. Okay. So as the form loads, first thing it's going to do is going to load this constructor. This is the form constructor here because it's got the same name as the class, which is called form1, right? So first thing it does is it initializes the components. So that's like loading up the designer, loading the buttons, the text boxes, the background pictures, picture boxes, timers, everything else. So we need this line, and it's very, very important. So under this line here, we're going to say restart game. So we want our game to basically get restarted as soon as the form is loaded, so the player can play it. And obviously if the player hits another obstacle, we can reset it by calling this restart function again. So I suppose we can start with a restart function here. So inside of this one, first thing we're going to do is say lbl score parent, right? So we want the parent of the label to be the picture box 1, which is the top picture box, right? Is this one here, because we don't want the background to show up like this. We want the label background to be transparent to whatever is in the back, because at the moment it's transparent to the background, which is the form. Okay, and then let's do the same for the high score as well. So lbl high score parent and picture box 2. So as you can see, it actually IntelliSense actually picked up what I wanted to do next, and it kind of puts it into a suggestion, which is really smart. Right, so second bit is we did that both parents there. Okay, and so if you want to just try to run this now, because this will run this function at the moment. So if you run it, give it a second. So as you can see right now, it actually loaded up the score, and then the way the score shows up here, it looks a lot better here because now the background of this one is there. However, our high score has disappeared, and the reason being is because it's not calculating the location of the high score according to the picture box, because it's still kind of away from it. So what we need to do is we need to, under this one, we have to say high score dot top is equals to 0. Okay, so what it's going to do is once it makes it once this picture box becomes the parent of this object, then it will go inside of it. So right now it will just place it where the top is of the picture box. Okay, so if I run this again, high score should show up. There is. So high score is there, and our normal score is showing up as well. Okay, so it makes it look a bit neat. However, player looks a bit squishy, so we can probably make it a bit smaller. Oh. Okay, so probably set the scale to 59, 74. Okay, we can try that, no problem. Let's try to run that one. That looks a little bit better. Okay, good. So the player can start there, that's perfectly fine. So we just need to grab the position from there. So the position at the moment where my player is set is 180 by 149, so I can just copy that. Okay, so I'm gonna say here right underneath the player.location is equals to new point, which is exactly what it's going to do, new point, and then put the x and y value. So this is the x and this is the y value of the player, so that way anytime the game loads, it will load it right there. Okay, and doesn't matter what happens to the game, what we want to do is we can say player.image is equals to properties.resources.run, I think it's the down one. Okay, so if it's run down 0, I've got to choose image resources. So as you can see, run down 0, that's the normal one, and then run up is the upside down one. Okay, so we want to set the player to this. Okay, right after that, we're going to set the score to 0, right? And we're not going to set the high score to 0 or anything like that, because high score is something that we want to keep saved for the duration of the game. Okay, we're going to set the gravity value back to 8. Okay, because gravity value is something that's going to change as the player progresses. So just in case the player's made it past, let's say, score 10, then the gravity value will change to like 12. Okay, and then say gravity is equals to gravity value. Okay, and then obstacle speed is going to be set to back to 10. For the obstacles, we have got a tag on them called obstacles, so we don't have to individually call them. We can run a for each loop to identify both of these and then set them to a random position on this side of the form. So next time when they actually come in, they will come towards the player and the player will have to decide which platform to land onto. Okay, so if I go here and do a for each loop, okay, say control X in this control, so this gives us access to all of the controls available inside of this form. Okay, I'm going to say here if X is, to do a space here, X is picture box, and we're going to do a casting. So the casting basically means we explicitly looking for this type of variable. So x.tag, because the tag is a word, so we need to use a casting for string. Okay, so x.tag is equals obstacle. So any picture box that exists inside the form with the obstacle tag. Okay, we're going to say x.left, leave, left is equals to random dot next. So what we can do here is we can set up a random number to say between 1200 and 3000. So it'll be resetting it somewhere away from the board. Okay, and the last thing we want to do with this one is we can say game timer dot start. So, and although we enable the timer, this is not going to affect the performance or anything like that. So it's still going to just check if it's started. If it's not started, it'll start it again. If we run the game, okay, so as you can see, the obstacles have moved away from the board, right? And if I make the board slightly bigger, should be able to see. So see, one of them got placed here, and then maybe another one got placed somewhere a bit further out. So this way we can actually make it seem like the obstacles are being spawned somewhere, although we're just using the two, right? So anytime one of them reaches the end, it will just reset back to another position on the side. Okay. Okay, so now let's do the key up function. So inside of this one, we're just going to be checking for two keys basically. So if one of them are released, so the enter key is going to be used to restart the game, and the space bar is going to be used to make the player jump between the platforms. Okay, so let's do the space key first. So if I say if key code equals keys dot space, right? So if the space key was released, if, so now we need to actually calculate the player top position and the player bottom position. So let's go ahead and figure out if the player is somewhere here. So because there's a slight padding there, right, we want to make sure the player actually lands, it looks like it's landed on the platform. So I'm going to right click on the player and then just say send it to back. Use the arrow keys to move it down a little bit so it looks like it's standing on the platform. I need to capture that location here. So right now you can see inside the location, while I got the player selected, X and Y is 343. Okay, so if player.top is equals 343, so that basically means we are the bottom platform there. Okay, and then we're going to say player.top minus equals 10. Right, so what that's going to do is, as soon as if the player is at that position there, right, and then we can just make the player jump up a little bit, and then we'll let the gravity do the trick from there. Okay, and then right after that we can say gravity is equals to minus gravity value. So we're reversing the gravity value, because anytime the object moves upwards, it reduces from the y value. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to change the image again. This time I'm going to change it to upside down, so that way I can actually get a better idea of this. So his legs are slightly touching the platform there, because there's a slight padding onto the image, so we want to make sure that the game looks good. Okay, so now if I go back to location, it is at 38. Okay, so right, I'm going to go outside of this if statement here. So right now we're still inside the if statement of the space key. So say else if player.top is equals, oh, completely forgotten what the number was, 38. Okay, do the curly brackets here. Now say player.top is plus equals 10, so this time we're pushing it downwards, right? And we're going to say gravity is equals to gravity value. So it's not going to be negative, it's going to be a positive value. So that was a negative value, this is a positive value. Okay. So that's for the space key, and then outside of this if statement, we're going to go ahead here and make another if. So if e.key code, oh, key value, key code is equals keys dot enter. So if you're wondering where the e comes from, so the e is actually placed inside of the argument here. So what this function is doing, or event is doing, is listening for a key event. So whatever event is passed in is actually stored inside of this e variable here. So we can actually access which key was released and so on. So if you want to do like other keys, you can just press, and so as soon as you go to here, you'll be able to see all these keys become available for you to use. Okay, but we're only interested in the space and the enter key. Okay, so if you want to customize the game, feel free to do so, and obviously you can customize it to any keys that you want. So this one only had one Boolean expression, but in this one we're going to need to have two, because we don't want the player to restart the game while in middle of the gameplay, just accidentally if you press the gameplay or something like that. We don't want the game to restart. So what we want to do instead is we want to check if alongside with the press of the enter key, we also want to check and game over Boolean is set to true. Okay, so I can do equals true, or I can just leave it at that, right? So if I just leave it at that, so that basically means that it's going to check if it's true, but for readability's sake we can just put it down to equals true, like so. So that way it actually shows obvious reason why we put it there. Okay, so and once if both of these conditions are true, then we can say restart function here. So the restart game function goes in here. Okay, so as soon as that is done, it will just do all of these things and move everything back to how it was. So right now, although you can see the player is upside down there, if I press the run the game, okay, the player will be reset to back to normal, which is quite nice. Okay, so with that being done, so the game timer event is our main game loop. So everything that goes on in the game, including the collision detection, the jumping, the animation, everything will happen inside the game timer. Also includes, like, you know, updating the labels and so on. So I suppose let's start with the labels first. Okay, so let's go ahead and say lbl score.text is going to be equals to, so it's just going to say score, and then plus score the variable. So the variable is going to change alongside with how often it gets used. And then lbl high score dot text is equals to, say, high score colon then plus high score, like so. Okay, right, so with those two done, we can actually now link the gravity to the player. So player dot top and plus equals to gravity. So what we want to do is, as soon as the game starts, we want to move the player downwards, so that's why we're doing the plus equals. Okay, so now if when the player lands on the platforms, okay, so we want to check whether the player has landed on the bottom platform or on the top platform. So what to do then? Okay, so let's say if, so player.top is say greater than, so the position that we're after is 343, right? So if it's greater than 343, then what we're going to do is we're going to set gravity to 0, so we don't want the player to move down anymore. Okay, and then player.top is going to be equals to 343. Okay, so we're going to stop the player right as where he is, and player.image is going to be set to properties.resources run down, I think, yeah. All right, so we're going to do the run down one, so that's the normal one. After that, we'll just do else if here. So else if player.top is now if it's less than, right? So if it's less than 38, I think it was, yep, 38. All right, so if it's less than 38, once again, we're going to set gravity back to 0, so it doesn't move up anymore. So, and player.top is going to be equals to 38, and then player.image is going to be equals to properties.resources.run top, right? Oh, run up right here. So basically it's going to get positioned and then changed up from there. Okay, so if we run the game now, let's try and see if the player actually moves down. So player moves down nicely, then moves up, moves down again. Okay, so see the little box that's appearing next to the player's leg there, that's basically happening because of the frame rate. So what we can do here is, just to improve the performance a little bit on the form, we can enable the double buffer of the form. So if you click on the form, right, and then we can just go and find double buffered option and then set that to true. Okay, and then if you run that again, it should run it a lot smoother now. So as you can see, it actually runs a lot smoother and it renders it quite nicely. Okay, so the pictures are changing, it's landing up and down. Okay, so now what we can do is, if we go back and now we need to move the obstacles. Okay, so we're going to use a similar for, well, exactly the same for loop that we used as before, but we'll just type it up again, so it's a lot easier to demonstrate. So let's go ahead and do a for each loop. So for each loop, this time we looked for a control before. So control X, right, in this controls, and then inside of this, I'm going to say if X is picture box, right, and once again a casting string, X.tag is equals obstacle. So make sure the spelling of the obstacle here and how you have it in the properties match. Okay, now that we capture those, we're going to say x.left is going to be minus equals obstacle speed. Okay, so it's going to move it towards the player because the player is positioned at that location there. Okay, and right underneath, because once it leaves the screen, it's not going to come back again. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that the obstacles are being positioned back to the right side of the screen. So here we can say if x.left is less than minus 100. Now the 100 number here doesn't have much of a significance. I just put it there because it's just easy to remember. But you can set it to anything else, or if your obstacles are bigger, you can set it to a different one. So however your game looks good. Okay. So once it leaves the screen from the left, so we're going to say x.left is going to be equals to random.next, and we'll just use another arbitrary number like 1200 by 3000. So it's going to pick any number between 1200 and 3000. Okay, and once it left, we know the fact that the player has successfully jumped over it, right? So we're going to say score is going to be plus equals to 1, right? So each box will give the player 1 score. Okay, so if we try to run this now, let's wait for the obstacles to appear. Okay, so there's one, there's another one, and our scores are going up as well. Okay, and I can still jump over. Okay, so it's kind of cool that simple stuff like this can make a small little game that actually looks good in Windows Form, although Windows Form wasn't made to be for game development, I suppose. Okay, so second bit is right now we got that's going. Okay, so the last thing we need to do now is to figure out the way to make these two obstacles, or both of these, interact with the player, right? So we're going to use picture boxes have something called bounds that we used before in lots of tutorials, and we're going to use the same one now as well. So here we're going to say if x.bounds, right? So the bounds are the boundaries of the object. So, and then I can say intersects with. Okay, and inside of that bracket we're going to say player dot bounds, like so. Right, so if any of the x, so that either one of them hit the player, right? So, and then obviously the game is, at this point the game is over. So we're going to say here game timer dot stop. So we want to stop the timer first. It's very important to stop the timer because anything else that you do afterwards will be repeating every 20 milliseconds. So we stop the timer first and then do the other instructions. Okay. Now we can say score. No, we need the label LBL score dot text. So in this case, we're going to say plus equals, and then do the colon here. Do the quotation. So the reason we're doing plus equals, we don't want to delete what's existing on the label here. We want to add it to next to it. Okay, and then just make some space here and say game over. So that's the game over message. And then say press enter to restart. Full stop. Okay, so if you hit another object, it just tells you game over, press enter. So it's pretty basic stuff still. And then we're going to change the game over boolean to true because now it has. And lastly, we're going to set the high score, right? So the high score needs to set here. So I say if score is now greater than high score, then high score is simply equals to score. That's it. All right, so it's as simple as that. So, but remember, this is not saving into a local file or the local system. So next time you run the game, if you close the game, your high score will be deleted and then it will set back to 0 again when you load the game up. So the high score will only save while the game is running. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so with that done, let's go ahead and check if that actually works. So now we have to actually avoid the obstacles because they will end the game. So I'm going to score 2 and then wait for the box to arrive. Hit that. Okay. So now the game is over. The message box is showing up here. I'm going to press enter to restart. So as you can see now, high score has been updated to 2 because that's why I scored. This time I'm going to try and score something like 1. Okay. And press enter. So it doesn't change, although because it's less than that score there. Okay, so let me just try and, oh, that's too close. Let's try and score a bit higher this time. Okay, so I got 4, 5. So I'm just going to wait for that to come in. That's it. Okay, so if I restart the game now, so the high score gets set to 5. Excellent. All right, so just to make the game slightly challenging, what we're going to do is if the player scores more than 10, we're going to improve the, increase the speed of the obstacle and the player a little bit, so to make the game slightly more fun. Okay, so as you can see, there's like a lot of curly brackets here. I'm just going to get rid of some of the spaces there. Right, so in Visual Studio, it actually highlights. I'm using like a different theme here, but in your one it will work the same way. So if you just select one of the curly brackets, it'll tell you where it starts and stops. So we don't want to be inside the for each loop anymore because we've done the bits that we need to do, and so we need to jump out of the for each loop. Okay, I'm gonna collapse that. Underneath the for each loop, I'm going to make some space here and say if, not game over. I don't know where that came from, but say if score is now greater than 10, right? Okay, if score is greater than 10, then we're gonna say obstacle speed. Okay, obstacle speed set it to 20, and then gravity value set that to say 12. Okay, and this is the reason we used gravity value as a separate integer, because otherwise you'll have to hard code the values inside of these. Right, so it makes it a lot easier for you to set the value of something in a separate place, so and it affects the other part of the program. So it's slightly more modular to the level where things can be changed without trying to change too many things in the code. So it's usually good practice to keep it like that. Okay, so now we're just gonna comment this out here. So say increase the speed of player and obstacles, so if you score past 10. Okay, so I'm just going to run the game again. Let's try to see if I can score past 10. Almost there. There we are. Okay. Right, so you'll see that they actually come a lot faster now, and you can jump up and down a little bit faster as well. Ooh, okay, and then obviously if you press enter, it restarts and the speed gets reset for both. Okay, so this has been the tutorial for making a Gravity Run game using Windows Form, .NET and C#. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and then I will see you on the next one.